Hello viewers. This module we will discuss on plate theory of chromatography. Chromatography is one of the important separation techniques which is widely employed for the separation of variety of the species which are present in different samples. So chromatographic separation technique is very essentially used not only for separation of the species but also we can identify what are all the species present in the sample and how much quantity of each species present in the sample we can estimate. Therefore, chromatographic techniques are very important techniques for the separation, isolation, identification, and quantification of the analytes which are present in the sample. In any chromatographic technique, as you know, individual analytes are going to be separated based on the partition principle. We will be using stationary phase, mobile phase in the chromatographic column. Solute molecules will be partitioning between stationary and mobile phase. While partitioning between the stationary and mobile phase, it is assumed that the solutes are going to form the bands in the chromatographic column. So in each and every band, the solute partitioning is considered and what is the width of the band and what is the quantum of the solute which is segregated in that particular band, that is all very important. So all these things with respect to concentration of the analyte, especially while quantification of the solute in chromatographic technique is explained by the plate theory. So this particular module is devoted to plate theory of column chromatography, which is very important to understand the nature of the band and how that band is related to the concentration of the solute and how this plate theory is derived, what is the use of this plate theory, and how this plate theory will be utilized to calculate the concentration of the solute. So these are the things you are going to understand at the end of this particular module. Okay, chromatograms are very useful for any separation scientist. Once the separation process is completed, at the end, the chromatograms are generated, whether you are doing the analysis by manually or if you are using any instrumental applications for the separation of the solute, it may be HPLC or GCMS, UPLC, whatever it is, maybe liquid chromatographic technique or gas chromatographic technique or supercritical fluid chromatographic technique. Nowadays, many sophisticated instruments are available, and the main aim involved in all such sophisticated instruments are after the separation process is over, we will be getting the chromatograms at the end. So we will be having the chromatograms in our hand. What is the use of those chromatograms? Chromatograms are very useful for the identification of the species. If you have introduced any sample for the chromatographic separation, what are the species present? What is the unknown species present in the sample you can identify? And not only identification of the species, but also we can quantify how much of the species present in the sample, what is the quantity of the analyte present in the sample we can determine. So let us take one by one. Let us have a picture how to identify the analyte which is present in the sample and how to quantify the analyte which is present in the sample. Okay, how do we identify? Generally, the identification process will be done. Say, for example, if you use mass spectrometric detector, as you know, a detector will be placed at the end of the chromatographic column. During the separation, solutes will be reaching to the detector. If the detector is a spectroscopic detector such as mass spectrometric detector or UV spectrometric detectors, directly we can derive the information about the solute, what kind of the solute present in the sample. If a mass spectrometric detector is placed, mass spectrometric detector will be giving the information about the M by Z value of the solute. So directly it is concerned to the identity of the analyte, because M by Z value, if we know, we can compare the M by Z value with the compound's molecular mass and we can decide whether this molecule is present or not. So like that. Otherwise, if you are doing a conventional chromatographic separation, what we do that we need a standard. We need a standard that is an external standard, and the external standard has to be chromatographed. Means you have a particular chromatographic procedure, and by means of that chromatographic procedure, you subject the solution containing a standard, known quantity of the standard. You know the standard, what is the molecular weight, what is the molecular formula, what is its name, everything you know, and it is a standard, and it is not containing any impurity. So that is going to be introduced to the head of the chromatographic column. So once the chromatographic column is used for the elution of this standard will be eluted with its own retention time. So you have the chromatogram for the standard. Then you take the sample, subject the sample for preparation of the solution by means of a suitable solvent, and you have the same chromatographic procedure. You run the sample through the chromatographic column. First, you have run the standard through the chromatographic column. You have the peak, chromatographic peak, or you have the chromatogram. It has TR value for the standard. Now you have run the sample. Sample has also generated the chromatogram, and you obtain the peaks in the chromatogram present in the sample and assume the TR values. And these TR values are the solutes which are present in the sample, right? If there is only one peak, there may be one solute is present. If there are two peaks, there are two solutes may be present in the sample. Anyway, whichever the number of solutes present, whatever the number of solutes present in the sample, you have the retention times for each peak for sample also. Now, you have two chromatograms. In one chromatogram, you have retention time for the standard which has been eluted at a specific retention time. And you have the chromatogram for sample also. You compare the retention time of the analyte from the sample and the standard. If there is matching with the retention time between the peak of the standard and the peak of the analyte from the sample, then you can ascertain whether the analyte same as standard is present in the sample or not. So suppose you are suspecting any drug molecule present in the given sample, say for example, you may have to estimate what is the quantity of unmetabolized paracetamol present in the blood sample. You take a pure paracetamol compound and you elute it. You note down the retention time. Then you take the blood sample after subjecting to a prior separation in order to remove all endogenous substances. Supernatant will be introduced to the chromatographic column. Then you elute the peak. If the chromatogram having the peak at the same retention time as the standard eluted, then you can assure paracetamol is present in the blood sample also. So this is how we can compare the retention times in order to identify the species. And this is a more common scenario. And how to quantify this? How to quantify the species or analyte present in the sample? Chromatograms are useful in two aspects. One is to identify the species, and the other one is to quantify the species. Quantification means what is the amount of the analyte present in the sample. So you have the chromatograms. As I told you in the earlier module that chromatogram will be containing the peaks, and the relative positioning of the peaks will be giving us the identity of the solute. And the relative height of the peak is proportional to the concentration of the solute. So what is the concentration of the solute present in the sample? That is related by the height of the peak. Concentration is more if in the sample, then the height of the peak will be more. If you elute three different solutions of the same analyte of three different concentrations, then chromatogram will be having the three peaks at the same retention time, but varied by height. Whichever the solute having the lower concentration, that will be eluted at the same retention time, but the height will be low. And if the solute concentration is high, height will be high. So the relative height of the peak will be more in case of higher concentration of the solutes. So what you have to do in the quantification process, you need a calibration standard. By means of an external standard, you will prepare series of solutions of known concentrations, and you will chromatograph them. You will run the chromatogram for all those standards. These standards are containing the same analyte, same species, same chemical compound. So when you look at the chromatogram, because of the varied concentration of this external standard, the chromatogram is having the peaks at the same retention time, but the heights will be varied. Then the peak area is very important for the standards. So the standards you have eluted, and you know the concentration of the standards. The peak height will be varied from one standard to another standard because of the varied concentration. That's it. And you take the sample and you chromatograph it. You take the sample and chromatograph it, and the peak area for this analyte present in the sample will be dependent upon the concentration of the analyte present in the sample. So you can compare the area of the standards, and the area of the analyte which has been eluted from the sample, or else you can prepare a calibration plot by using peak area versus concentration of the standard, and by means of the calibration plot you can determine what is the concentration of the analyte present in the sample. So this is how calibration curve method will be widely employed to quantify the species or the analyte which is present in the sample. Therefore, chromatograms are very useful in order to identify the solute and in order to quantify the solute which is present in the sample. Okay, so peak area is a very important aspect. You must not forget this. You have to remember always peak area will be used to compare the concentration of the solutes, to obtain the concentration of the solutes. So detector will be responding. So some chromatograms will be having greater peak area and some chromatographic peaks will be having lower peak area. So in what aspect the detector will be responding? In what aspect? So the aspect is concentration. The detector will be responding in respect to concentration. As the concentration is low, the peak area will be lower. As the concentration is more, peak area will be high. So this is the relationship we have to understand. Then the relationship between the concentration and the parameter responded is also very important. What kind of relationship existing between concentration and the parameter responded by the detector? Detector will be responding with respect to concentration of the solute. In what way it is related? It is also very important. So we have understood that when you introduce the sample solution to the chromatographic column, each and every solute are occupied with their own bands, occupied with their own bands. The density of the band will be more as the concentration of the solute in the sample is more. As a result, the chromatographic peak will be having greater area, higher area. And as a result, the height of the peak will be more if the concentration is more. So each and every individual band in the chromatographic column with respect to individual solute. So this band is made up of certain number of discrete imaginary units in the stationary phase, because when the solute is moving down the chromatographic column, it will be partitioning according to equilibrium principle. It will be partitioning between the stationary and mobile phase. So in each and every band, there will be some total infinite number or finite number of uniform discrete imaginary units can be seen in the stationary phase, and this is due to the partitioning or the relative affinity of the solute towards the stationary phase. So each and every discrete unit going to be used up by the solute for the partitioning process. So if you have 1000 units, all those 1000 units will be utilized by the solute to undergo partitioning. So therefore, this number of imaginary discrete units will be more as the concentration is more. So if the solute is having higher concentration, the number of discrete imaginary units will be more, which is segregated in a particular band of the solute. So individual band is for the individual solute, and this individual band is made by so many number of individual discrete units. And these units are very important. The individual discrete units in an individual band is directly proportional to concentration. So if the concentration is more, number of units present in the band will also be more, because the solute is occupied in all these individual units. The solute has used up all these units to undergo partitioning. So this is very, very important. And what do we call this terminology in chromatography? Let us understand. This particular slide is devoted to show how the analyte concentration is proportional to number of units in a particular band for a particular solute. You assume this is a chromatographic column, and this chromatographic column is filled by the stationary phase. You assume a sample you have, and that is containing solute A and solute B. So in order to initiate the separation, you will prepare the sample solution by means of a suitable mobile phase or solvent. Then you will introduce the sample solution at the head of the chromatographic column. So once you start the process of elution, after the introduction of the sample through the head of the chromatographic column, at the top, dependent upon the relative affinities of the stationary phases for the solutes, or the dependent upon the relative interaction of the solute with the stationary phase, the solutes are segregated in their individual bands. So here I have interpreted by yellow and blue color bands, and this yellow band is for solute A and this blue band is for solute B. So at the top of the chromatographic column, the bands are present together. Bands are present together. When you pass mobile phase through the chromatographic column, as the mobile phase move down the chromatographic column, these bands are also getting separated. And this band separation is due to again relative affinity of the solute towards the stationary phase. Here band B is moving farther down than band yellow. Why? This band blue is for solute B, and this solute B is having a lower affinity towards the stationary phase when compared to band yellow, that is solute A. Okay, if you consider these two bands, this band blue means this is a band for solute B, is having several imaginary discrete units, and all these discrete units are presented here. So this band B for solute B or band A for solute A, it is made up of several discrete units. Means this is the portion occupied by solute A, and solute A is partitioned between the stationary phase and mobile phase, and the stationary phase has been used up by the solute to undergo partitioning, and this particular space is occupied by these many number of plates, these many number of individual discrete units. And similarly for solute B, these many number of individual discrete units are present in this particular band. So if you take this band, these are the discrete units present, and if you take this band, these are the discrete units present. So these individual discrete units are called as theoretical plates. So these are the theoretical plates for solute A, and these are the theoretical plates for solute B. So we can see the bands of different colors for the solutes which are differently colored when they are present in the sample. And even the bands are possible to be formed in the chromatographic column for the colorless solutes too. So, but these imaginary bands are, as the name is implying, they are imaginary. They are imaginary. We cannot see these bands, and these bands are associated with the several kinetic aspects. So, as they move down the chromatographic column, width of individual band will also increase. That is called as band broadening. So, this is an individual band, and the width of this particular band keep on increases as the bands move down the chromatographic column, and this increased width of individual band is due to several kinetic parameters that we will discuss when we come to theory of band broadening. So you can see individual bands in the chromatographic column for individual solutes, and each band is made up of several discrete units, and solute A as a band in the chromatographic column with several discrete units with respect to that solute, and solute B having a band in the chromatographic column with several bands in the chromatographic column with respect to this particular solute in this particular band. So what do you call these discrete units? these discrete units will be varying from 250 to 25 lakhs or 2.5 lakhs or 1 lakhs or 50,000 or 25,000 or 4,000, etc. So especially if you are working with any chromatographic system, there are standard guidelines. So if analyte is having the ability to give these many number of discrete units, that is theoretical plates, then only we have to consider the elution of that analyte. Otherwise, that chromatographic procedure will not be suitable. So don't worry about that. So individual discrete unit which is segregated in this band is known as theoretical plates. So when the number of theoretical plates in this particular band will become more, so when the concentration of the analyte is more, which is moving across the chromatographic column. So if the concentration of the analyte is more, then the number of theoretical plates, number of these imaginary discrete units will also be more. If the concentration is less, number of plates will be less. Number of plates will be less. Or the density of the plate will also be less if the concentration is less. If the concentration is more, the density of the band will also be more. So now you have come to the conclusion that in a chromatographic column, solutes are separated based on the formation of their own bands with respect to their relative affinities towards the stationary phase. And each and every band will be having own individual discrete units. They are present all together. All these discrete units are known as individual theoretical plates. So if there are 100 discrete units, the theoretical plates will be 100. If there are 2.5K individual units are present, the number of theoretical plates is 2.5K. So this is how you can understand the theoretical plates which are present in each and every band of different solutes. So on this aspect, the concept of theoretical plate is very important. And this theoretical plate aspect is used to express the column efficiency. So to how extent the column is efficient for the elution of the solute through the chromatographic column. And it is a column characteristic. And this column efficiency is directly linked to the concentration of the solute, which is eluted out of the chromatographic column. Right. So as I told in the earlier slide, each and every number of units are known as individual theoretical plate, and altogether total number of theoretical plates expressed by n, capital N, uppercase N. So where n is the number of theoretical plates. So as you have seen here, each and every plate has own heights. Each and every plate, it may be for solute A or solute B. If solute A containing 2,500 theoretical plates or 2.5 lakhs of theoretical plates, each and every height will be having its own height. And for solute A, each and every plate is having its own height, and even for solute B, each and every plate is having their own heights. So height is denoted by H. Height is denoted by H. These two terminologies, number of theoretical plates and height of a theoretical plate. Height of a theoretical plate is also known as height equivalent per theoretical plate, HETP. HETP. So height equivalent per theoretical plate is also the name which is used to express the height of individual theoretical plate. So column efficiency is expressed by using the number of theoretical plates and height equivalent per theoretical plate. So as the number of theoretical plates in the individual band for any solute is more, so number of theoretical plates if more, then it is assumed that the concentration will be more. If there is more concentration of the solute moving through the chromatographic column, all the plates are segregated in a band, and the number of plates will be very high if the concentration is high. Therefore, number of theoretical plates for any solute is directly proportional to concentration of the analyte. If you consider the number of theoretical plates with respect to height, if the height is more, then the extent of band spreading will be more, and this increased height of a theoretical plate is going to suppress the efficiency of the column for the separation of that solute or the elution of that solute. So if the height is more, it will be inversely proportional to concentration. If the height is more, that is going to suppress the column efficiency. So if you have more number of theoretical plates, then the chromatographic procedure has to be set in such a way that the height of individual theoretical plate must be lower, as low as possible. And this height, the value of height of theoretical plate is dependent upon the nature of the stationary phase. If the solute is going to spread to the maximum extent, then height is going to be definitely more, and the column efficiency is going to be suppressed because there are less number of theoretical plates. So we can say roughly the number of theoretical plates for any solute band is directly proportional to concentration of the analyte. The height of a theoretical plate is inversely proportional to concentration of the analyte. If the height is more, analyte concentration is less. If height is less, analyte concentration is more. Right. So as the value of n is high, efficiency of the column is also high. Thus, we will use the term column efficiency. So the column efficiency is expressed by the terminology n, number of theoretical plates, number of theoretical plates. Right. This column efficiency is described by means of a plate theory. What is this plate theory? Plate theory is expressed in order to extend the description on the column efficiency. What is column efficiency and what is the meaning of this n, how it is related to the separation efficiency, all these things explained by plate theory. So, individual theoretical plate, how this name is given to the individual theoretical plate. Okay. This theoretical plate concept was introduced by Martin and Singe in 1952. They won the Nobel Prize for proposing this partition chromatography. While they were working for partition chromatography, they come across with this theoretical plate concept. They have denoted each and every individual discrete unit as a theoretical plate, and this theoretical plate is directly linked to the column efficiency. So this work has been done in the year 1952, and for this work, Nobel Prize has been given. So according to this Martin and Singe concept, two related terms, as I already indicated in the previous slide, are required to be mentioned here. So plate height denoted by h and plate count denoted by n. Plate height h and plate count n. Individual plate will be having its own height, and individual plate number is denoted by n. If there are 100 plates, n will be 100. If there are 100,000 plates, n will be 100,000. Like this. How they are related? If these many number of plates are segregated in a band of solute which is moving through the chromatographic column, and it has a length of L centimeter or L meter, the number of theoretical plates for an individual band for any solute which is eluted using a chromatographic column having length L can be written as n is equal to L by h. So number of theoretical plates will be equal to L by h according to Martin and Singe. According to Martin and Singe. So column efficiency will be more when number of theoretical plates are more. If the column has to be set as more efficient column, n value should be more or h value should be less. If the more number of theoretical plates are present for individual band, then the column efficiency will be more. If the h value is less, then the column efficiency will be more. If the h value is more, column efficiency will be less, and thereby in turn n value will be less. So this is proposed by Martin and Singe. And he has given the theory to describe the number of theoretical plates and the behavior of plates in the chromatographic column. So you take any chromatogram. This is the chromatogram presented. Chromatogram will be having a symmetrical peak which is eluted at a certain time, and that time is known as retention time, and this retention time will be at the center of the peak. If you take a chromatographic peak, this will be having a front and this will be having a tail. So this is the front, this is the end. So this is the direction of generation of the chromatogram, right? Like this. So this is a front of the chromatographic peak and this is the tail of the chromatographic peak. So this is the center. At the center, exactly, the retention time will be noted. So what is this retention time? This is the time taken by the solute to get signaled by the detector. Here exactly the solute is going to be reaching the detector, right? So this chromatographic peak is Gaussian in shape. Bell-shaped curve has been obtained. Bell-shaped curve is this. And if you look at the center towards the left-hand side and towards the right-hand side from the center, there is almost the same distance if seen, that is denoted by plus sigma and minus sigma. And if this plus sigma and minus sigma having the distance same, then you can say this is a symmetric chromatographic peak. If this minus sigma and plus sigma, they are having different values, then we cannot say it is a symmetric peak, it will be unsymmetric peak. So this is very important. Minus sigma from the center to the left hand side to the peak initiation. This is the peak initiation point and this is the peak termination point. This is the center. From TR to left hand side, that is to the peak initiation point, it is denoted by minus sigma. From TR to right hand side to the peak termination point, peak ending point, that is denoted by plus sigma. And this is obtained at the chromatographic peak, minus sigma and plus sigma. This is obtained by the chromatographic peak because this is present in the Gaussian shape. This is one thing. And the baseline width can be obtained at the baseline. Baseline width can be obtained at the baseline of the chromatographic peak. And you have to obtain the width at 50% of the chromatographic peak also. You need that. 50% of the chromatographic peak. So you have the chromatogram. In the chromatogram, there is a peak, and the peak is eluted at the retention time TR, and it has minus sigma and plus sigma in the peak towards left hand side and right hand side because this is in Gaussian shape. So what is the length of the column? If you consider this minus sigma, that will be L minus sigma. And if you consider this plus sigma, L plus sigma, the length of the column the solute has reached, right? Up to this point is L minus sigma, and up to this point it is L plus sigma, right? So according to this, because the chromatographic peak or the chromatogram is Gaussian in shape, therefore the width at the base is described by the standard deviation, that is denoted by sigma. If TR is present here, the width, the baseline width for a chromatographic peak is denoted by the standard deviation, that is sigma, and the retention time is denoted as TR plus or minus sigma. So sigma is the standard deviation, or even you can use variance, square of the standard deviation, sigma square, that is variance. So by using this variance or standard deviation, the efficiency denoted by H, I will use here H, not N, height of the theoretical plate, can be expressed as variance per unit length, that is sigma square by L. This is according to Martin and Sinch. So since the chromatographic peak is Gaussian in shape, the width at the baseline is minus sigma into plus sigma, that is sigma square. The width at the baseline is minus sigma into plus sigma, therefore it is sigma square. So the height of the theoretical plate, this one peak is for the individual solute. It has been made up of by number of theoretical plates. So what is the height of individual theoretical plate? Denoted by H. So H is written as sigma square divided by L. H is denoted as sigma square divided by L. Okay. The variance of the solute peak here, sigma square, which will have the unit second square, because sigma square is the standard deviation, and at the baseline time factor, it is retention time is expressed in seconds or minutes. Therefore, the standard deviation is also expressed in seconds or minutes. Since variance is sigma square, sigma into sigma, so second into second, it will be second square. And this variance is usually designated as tau square. Tau square. Why do we use this tau? In order to distinguish it from sigma square. We cannot use variance here, so it has to be distinguished. Therefore, we will use tau square. And this tau square will be having the unit centimeter square. If we assume baseline in centimeter, how long the distance occupied by each and every band, that is expressed in terms of centimeters. Distance is measured by centimeter. So tau square having the unit of centimeter square. Instead of second square, we will use centimeter square. If you assume here, the distance occupied by the individual band in this individual chromatographic peak, distance can be expressed in terms of centimeters. So variance can be substituted by tau square, a new term tau square, which has a unit of centimeter square. Okay, now you have two standard deviations. One is tau, another one is sigma. One is tau, another one is sigma. Tau is with respect to distance, sigma is with respect to time. How they are related? You know, these two, standard deviation with respect to distance and standard deviation with respect to time, are related in this way. Tau is equal to sigma by V, where V is the linear velocity of the solute moving through the chromatographic column. You know, V is equal to L by TR, you just substitute sigma divided by L by TR will be equal to tau. Tau will be equal to sigma divided by L by TR. Right. So, you know, the base at the width, you have the chromatogram, it has the baseline width WB or W. Base of the width is 4 times of its standard deviation, 4 into tau or 4 into sigma. This is according to the standard relationship. If you take any symmetric peaks, the base of any peak will be exactly equal to 4 times of its standard deviation. If the standard deviation is denoted by tau here with respect to distance, therefore W will be equal to 4 into tau. W is equal to 4 into tau. So, you know, tau is equal to sigma by L by TR. Tau is equal to sigma by L by TR. So, in place of tau, you substitute sigma by L by TR, you will get W is equal to 4 into sigma into TR divided by L. 4 into sigma into TR divided by L. So, now we have 4 into sigma into TR divided by L is equal to tau. So, sigma is equal to W into L divided by 4 into TR. If you simplify this, sigma is equal to W into L divided by 4 into TR. We know that H is equal to sigma square divided by L. So, height of a theoretical plate is expressed as square of the standard deviation per unit length of the column. Variance per unit length of the column is nothing but the height of the theoretical plate, according to Martin and Singe. So we have sigma is equal to W into L divided by 4 into TR, and we know that height of the theoretical plate is expressed as variance per unit length of the column. Use these two and rearrange, you will get H is equal to, in place of sigma square, W square into L square divided by 16 TR square divided by L. Where L and L will be getting cancelled, you will be ending up with H is equal to W square into L divided by 16 TR square. W square into L divided by 16 TR square. We know N is equal to L by H. N is equal to L by H. And we have this equation. You rearrange by using these two. So, if N is equal to L by H is equal to L by N. Thus, L by N is equal to, in place of H here, L by N is equal to W square into L divided by 16 TR square. So, N is equal to L by H. So, H is equal to L by N. So, H is also equal to W square L divided by 16 TR square. So, L by N is also equal to W square L divided by 16 TR square. So, L by N is equal to W square into L divided by 16 TR square. L and L will be getting cancelled. So you will be ending up with N is equal to 16 TR divided by W whole square, or N is equal to 16 TR square divided by W square. This is the important equation which is used to calculate the number of theoretical plates for an individual solute. If you have the chromatogram will be giving you the retention time and the baseline weight. So these two terms can be obtained from the chromatogram. If you substitute how many number of theoretical plates are formed for that solute, you can calculate. So as I told you, in the calibration curve method, instead of peak area, even you can have the number of theoretical plates in the y-axis, and that will be plotted as a function of the concentration of the solute. As the number of theoretical plates will be more, the concentration will be more. As the value of N is less, concentration will be less. So this is the important equation derived by Martin and Singe in order to express the column efficiency in terms of number of theoretical plates, denoted as N is equal to 16 TR squared divided by W squared. And instead of this equation can also be used, that is N is equal to 5.54 into TR squared divided by W off square, where W off is the baseline width of the chromatographic peak at 50% of its height. At 50% of its height, I have showed in the chromatogram. So N is equal to 5.54 into TR squared divided by W off square. So this is the equation very important to express the column efficiency in terms of number of theoretical plates, or this is also the equation, right? So column efficiency is expressed in terms of number of theoretical plates, and that can be used to express by calculating the number of theoretical plates using either this expression or this expression. So if the chromatographic peak is symmetric, as I told earlier, say this is the retention time you assume, and from retention time towards left hand side, what is the distance you note down, and if the distance towards the right hand side, if they are same, then this peak will be symmetric. So these two equations are applicable to calculate the number of theoretical plates only for symmetric peaks, only for symmetric elution peaks, right? So you can get TR and W from the chromatogram, and you can calculate the number of theoretical plates for such symmetric peaks. If the peaks are unsymmetric, in certain cases, peaks will be eluted with unsymmetry. You see here, this is the retention time. Distance towards the left hand side from the retention time to the initial point of the chromatographic peak is not equal to distance between the retention time point and the terminating point of the chromatographic peak, denoted by B and A. B is not equal to A here because this peak is unsymmetric. So one half of the peak is not a mirror image of the other half, right? In such case, you can say this is not symmetric. If one half is mirror image to other half, then it will be symmetric, exactly. So for such unsymmetric peaks, this equation is not going to be used to calculate the number of theoretical plates. Then how do we calculate? That is calculated by using Foley and Darcy equation. So that is this equation. You need not to go through the derivation. So number of theoretical plates for such unsymmetric peaks is denoted as 41.7 into TR square divided by W.1 square divided by A by B plus 1.25, where TR is the retention time. As usual, you can obtain from the peak point as it is interpolated to the x-axis. You can obtain the retention time, and W.1 is the height width of the chromatographic peak at 10% height of the chromatographic peak. If this is 100% height, and at 10%, what is the width of the chromatographic peak you obtain? That is W.1. So TR square divided by W.1 square into 41.7 divided by A by B plus 1.25. Here A and B can be obtained from the chromatogram. You place the point for the retention time towards the left hand side from the retention time point to initiation point of the chromatographic peak, that is B. And from the retention time point to the termination point of the chromatographic peak denoted by E, that is totally A by B, and this is called as asymmetry factor. The ratio A by B is called as asymmetry factor, and 1.25 is a constant, asymmetry constant. This 41.7 is also constant. So this equation is known as Foley and Darcy equation, and this is used to calculate the number of theoretical plates for unsymmetric peaks. So that is N is equal to 41.7 into TR square divided by W 0.1 square divided by asymmetry factor, that is A by B plus 1.25. So W.1 can also be obtained as B plus A or A plus B. W.1 is a summation of A and B. A and B. Even instead of B, you can write A here and you can write B here. Anything is okay. So for symmetric peaks, number of theoretical plates will be calculated by using the expression N is equal to 16 TR square by W square, or 5.54 into TR square divided by W half square. For unsymmetric peaks, you have to use Foley and Darcy equation, that is N is equal to 41.7 into TR square divided by W.1 square divided by A by B plus 1.25, where TR is the retention time, W.1 is the width at 10% height of the peak, and A by B is the asymmetry factor you can calculate by means of the chromatogram. So this is about the column efficiency. And why this unsymmetry will be arised, it is very important. Unsymmetry, why it is arised? If the peak is symmetric, as you see here, peak is symmetric, and this peak is ideal peak, and this chromatogram is called as ideal chromatogram. If you see here, this chromatogram is non-ideal. It is not ideal because the peak is unsymmetric. Why this non-ideality will be arised? Why the non-ideal behavior of chromatograms? The two factors are responsible to explain this non-ideal behavior of chromatogram. One is fronting and another one is tailing. If you see here, I have presented three chromatograms. One will be ideal chromatogram. There is no any abnormal behavior of the chromatogram here. There is ideal behavior of the chromatogram. Here, there is a tail at the beginning of the chromatographic peak, and here there is a tail at the end of the chromatographic peak. There is a tail at the beginning, here there is a tail at the ending. So this is a normal peak, ideal peak, and this is a peak with the fronting, and this is the peak with tailing. What is this fronting and tailing? These type of peaks are obtained whenever the column is loaded with too much of sample. Say column will be having its own capacity. Say for example, instead of 1 microgram solute, if the column has been introduced by 10 microgram gram of solute, then the quantum of the solute introduced to the chromatographic column will be more. So the quantity is more. So the solute is going to partition in the abnormal manner. Therefore, you can see a tail at the beginning of the chromatogram because the solute has been introduced in a greater quantity, or the column has been overloaded. So because of the overloading of the column, because of the introduction of the larger, too much amount of the solute to the chromatographic column, or too much quantity of the sample to the chromatographic column, there is a disturbance in the equilibrium, partitioning of the solute. Therefore, this fronting is seen. Fronting is nothing but, in a chromatographic peak, if you see, there is a tail can be seen at the beginning of the chromatographic peak. That is known as fronting, and this fronting is due to overloading of the column. And similarly, if you look at this, there is a tail at the end of the chromatographic peak, and this is due to there is the possibility of certain sites of the stationary phase retaining the solute more strongly than the rest of the sites. If you take the throughout the column, there are n number of sites are present in the stationary phase, and all those sites are responsible to have the interaction with the solute. Out of all those sites, certain sites of the stationary phase are strongly interacting with solute. Therefore, where the partitioning is different than the partitioning of the salute at other sites. Therefore, this tailing will be occurring when some sites on the stationary face retain the salute more strongly than other sites, right? Therefore, this fronting and tailing will cause the non-ideal behavior of the chromatogram eventually or consequently. As a consequence of this fronting and tailing, we can see a tail at the beginning of the chromatogram and at the end of the chromatogram due to overloading of the column or the ability of certain sides of the stationary face to interact with the salute more strongly. So this is known as non-ideal behavior. Ideal behavior is due to the partitioning of the salute between the stationary face and the mobile face. It should be ideal. Stationary face and mobile face will be involving during the partitioning process. So salute will be partitioning between stationary and mobile face. So as the salute is moving from mobile face to stationary face, the concentration of the salute in the stationary face must be increased, and that should have a linear aspect. If you plot the graph of concentration of salute in the mobile phase to concentration of salute in the stationary phase, the concentration profile should be linear. Here, if the column is too much overloaded, so the non-ideal behavior is seen. The partitioning equilibrium will be disturbed. Therefore, there will be tail at the beginning of the chromatographic peak. And if certain sides of the stationary phase is interacting with the salute to the greater extent when compared to other sides, then there will be non-ideal behavior seen. So this peak unsymmetry is due to the non-ideal behavior of the salute, and these two are explained by fronting and tailing. So this is about the non-ideal behavior of the salutes. So in this module, you have understood about the column efficiency, theory of Martin and Singe, that is denoted as plate theory. Plate theory will be used to express the number of theoretical plates, how the column is efficient to separate the salute. If more the number of theoretical plates, then the efficiency of the column will be more. Then the ideality and non-ideality of the chromatograms we have discussed. How to calculate the number of theoretical plates for symmetric peaks and unsymmetric peaks we have discussed, and the non-ideal behavior of the chromatograms we have discussed. Thank you very much. We'll see you in the next module.